Hello everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the Devil Arm tier list. Since it's been a while, I'll give a quick refresher on the rules and then we'll just hop right into it. Rule number 1, of course, is that the Devil Arms cannot hurt the user in any way. If the weapon summons fire, the fire can't hurt the user. Rule number 2, these weapons, their strength is dictated by human on human violence. This isn't going to be human on demon. There's a lot of factors that go into that, and it just makes everything a lot more convoluted. So, for simplicity's sake, and to make things a bit more interesting, let's just do human on human. Either way, let's hop right into it. Starting with, the first weapon in S tier is Ifrit. Now, the reason why this is in S tier and not A tier, and why I personally think it's better than Beowulf, which was at the top of A tier, is a few simple reasons. Ifrit is shown to be able to just deal more damage, more elemental power in comparison to Beowulf. But one big thing that I think is overlooked a lot when it comes to this is Ifrit is incredibly sentient. A lot of people might forget this, but the cutscene that Ifrit is shown in is one where Ifrit wakes up, lies around, and then latches on to Dante as a type of method of torturing him or maybe killing him. But of course, as we know, Dante is able to survive it just fine. And because of the rule that we set up, you, the person who gets this, will also be able to survive it just fine. The reason why I think that works best at the bottom of S tier is mainly because of its competition. Everything else in S tier, double S tier, and triple S tier greatly outclass it, and so because of that, we're going to keep Ifrit here. Next up in S tier is the Navan. The Navan is a very interesting weapon. It has very potent elemental powers and is able to have a very wide area of effect on almost all of its attacks. There are a few limitations, but nothing too big. And it is shown to be quite adept at dealing with hordes of enemies. Not only that, but one-on-one, it's not too big of a slouch, but it doesn't shine as much. One of the only things that holds it back is the fact that it's a guitar, and from what we've seen, you have to actually know how to play it properly. But it's a guitar. Guitars aren't the most difficult instrument to learn and to play at more of a basic level. And besides, who knows? Maybe the better you are at the guitar riff that you do, maybe the stronger the attack. But that's just pure speculation. And honestly, with all the other weapons, you would have to train with them quite a bit. So all this one is just learning how to play a new instrument. And who knows? You might actually end up not using this one as a weapon and using it as a actual musical instrument. Who would have guessed? Honestly, in retrospect, this weapon is a lot more similar to the Cavalier with its weird stipulations of how you have to train with it. But I'd say it works really good above Ifrit, but just behind the next one, which is... The next one is Agni and Rudra. Agni and Rudra are a very interesting weapon. And I think it's by time that I talk about why I put such a heavy emphasis on sentience in your weapon. The main reason why I talk about it a lot is because, especially in this case, if you are a person, you are naturally a lot less durable than Dante and other things like that. So, you're a lot more squishy. You are able to die a lot quicker, is what I'm trying to say. So, in this case, having a weapon that is literally able to tell you when you are in danger, is able to help you in training with it, and other things like that. Plus, you add on to it its very, very potent elemental abilities, and oh boy, you got one heck of a weapon. Agni and Rudra also has a very tiny setback, with it being the whole idea of you having to actually dual wield the weapon because it's two short swords. But again, a bit of training. You'll get right through it, I'm sure. Either way, that was the end of S tier. At this point, we are going to get into very, very insane double arms, and some that you might not even expect, and some you might have actually forgotten. But let's move on to at the top of double S tier, we have the King Cerberus. The King Cerberus is very unique in the fact that it's just a straight upgrade to the normal Cerberus. I mean, honestly, what were you expecting? I'm sure a lot of you actually saw this coming. It's not a very hot take, but I would definitely say that maybe its positioning is. Now, the reason why I think that this one is very strong is because either, you just have 3 weapons at your disposal for the cost of 1. Each one of them having very potent elemental powers, and being 3 completely different elements. If you don't want to learn nunchucks, well, that's fine. You still have a bow staff. And not to mention, as seen with Dante, you are able to switch modes instantly. It shows that the weapon is able to decide intent within the user's mind. If you think, oh, I want fire, then it will change to fire. If you want electricity, instantly switch to electricity. Now, again, there are a few stipulations and things that you have to get around. One of the big ones is electricity has to actually charge up a bit, but the attacks are a lot more devastating. Fire is a lot more limited in its attacks and is a lot better on one-on-one, and it does quite a bit of damage though. And ice is very good for types of crowds of enemies. Not to mention, nunchucks are very good at intimidating enemies. So all you need to do is learn a couple of nunchuck tricks and you'll put your enemy on edge. Honestly, them seeing your weapon change from a pair of nunchucks to a bow staff, honestly, I think your opponent is going to be quite worse for wear just by witnessing it, let alone fighting against it. Though I guess that's a bit unfair. All of these weapons would terrify the shit out of a normal person. But either way, I think that the King Cerberus, when compared to other double S tier items, definitely fits perfectly right here, above Agni and Rudra, but right behind the next ones. And the next one is... The next one is Alistair. Alistair is a very interesting sword, which... honestly, I'm sure a lot of you just right now thought to yourself, how the hell is Alistair so high up? It's an electricity sword. I'm sorry, bro, but I think I'm missing something. Well, the reason why the Alistair is so high, especially compared to the Rebellion, is not only because of its elemental capabilities, which it's shown to have in quite the abundance of. The main reason for it is because... a lot of you might not know this, but from the research that I've done, the Alistair actually has the capabilities of increasing the user's strength and agility. The Alistair is a very formidable weapon to have, but there are a few other things to it. You see, in the Devil May Cry Drama CD Volume 1, a fight breaks out near Enzo's shop. Now, if you don't know, Enzo is actually the guy that Dante sells all of his devil arms to. Now, in short, the plot summary of this is that there is a demon named Titania. Titania possesses Lady, and Lady then attacks Dante. But before the attack can hit Dante, Alistair flew to Dante and protected him from the strike. Then Dante proceeded to use Alistair to defeat Titania. This shows quite a bit and reveals a lot about Alistair as a devil arm. Now, another thing about Alistair that I'm sure a lot of you might not have even noticed was Alistair has a very interesting effect. In every cutscene in Devil May Cry 1, where Dante is in some sort of danger, Alistair starts electrocuting his spine. Now, you might also notice that whenever this happens, Dante peeks his head up and then immediately notices the boss. This is very obviously Alistair communicating to Dante in some ways, meaning that he can communicate to the user. So, in my opinion, is honestly a more preferable version of the Agni and Rudra. It seems that Alistair has more potent abilities. So, because of this, I definitely have to say, with it having literally nothing holding it back and it being quite simple to learn. Keep in mind, simple, not easy. There's a big difference between simple and easy. It's very simple to learn and has a lot of power and strength behind it. I do have to say that I'm going to have to put it quite high, because not only are you gaining a very powerful weapon, whenever you're holding it, the weapon is talking to you. Its eyes at the back of your head. And not only that, it also helps you gain the ability to be able to run faster, jump higher, hit harder. So I'd say with all of that, it fits pretty well right here. This one is the Faust. The Faust is a very interesting weapon, with the subtitle The Gambler's Hat. Now, this weapon was not kind to me when I was researching it. See, there is a lot that goes into the Faust. The Faust's whole identity is gambling away a currency in order to do very, very strong attacks. Now, the Faust is a very interesting weapon in the sense that it's very difficult in order for me to calculate it. See, I was originally going to put this all the way down next to the Nightmare Type B, all those. I was very quick to write it off, but it felt kind of disingenuous because of how strong the attacks were. The thing can summon meteors, create an entire field around you. You can even take off the hat and it'll summon a little ghost guy who will work as your little deputy and fire shots for you. I mean, come on. There has to be something to it. There's no way that I would be able to write it off. And I was so close to doing it because, again, the ammo for it is red orbs, which is crystallized demon blood. But then I realized something very interesting. See, as many of you might know, Dante can take off the hat, throw it, and it'll boomerang back to him. And if it hits an enemy, then it gets a type of ghost copy of the hat. Now, from what we can tell, either enemies cannot tell that they have a hat on them, because when you throw it on bosses and stuff like that, they don't try and get it off or even acknowledge the fact that you just threw a cowboy hat on them. But by the looks of it, it definitely cannot be taken off. But there was something that was very interesting to me. You see, when you do this, when you throw the hat at someone, right, and it sticks to them, more red orbs appear, which is more ammo for the weapon. Now, originally, I was racking my brain around, trying to figure out what could it be? What could it mean? It had to mean something. The fact that it's able to just produce red orbs, well, what could it be? See, originally I thought that maybe it was siphoning blood out of the demon and summoning more of it. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, actually. The more you think about it, it makes none whatsoever. By that same logic, if Dante threw the hat on someone and then hit the Impusa or whatever a bunch, and then a bunch of red orbs spawn, when he actually killed the thing should logically drop less red orbs, correct? So, logically, it would mean that this thing is actually spawning its own ammunition. And for some reason, it has to be latched on to a host in order to do it. Now, if you're getting into a fight with someone, it seems quite simple to, when the fight starts, kind of dodging around for a bit and then throwing the hat on them. No matter what you hit them with, it's gonna drop a bit of red orbs. And when you stand next to them, it gets absorbed into your body. Unless you want to believe that Dante, for every tiny red orb, is actually walking up and picking it up. I'm sorry, I think it's more likely that the thing gravitates to people. So, when you do that, the hat will now have ammunition. And all you'll need is a bit, because think about it. You doing the basic fire attack where you make a little finger gun and start shooting at your enemy, that's going to summon more red orbs. So all you ever need to do is hit the guy once, and then boom, you've already started the cycle, and it's impossible to stop at this point. And after you get a few, you can maybe summon up a big field around you of like spinning red orbs, and what are they going to do, huh? Punch you? So that's definitely not going to accomplish anything. And let's say, hypothetically, you're somehow so good at using this weapon, you've gained hundreds upon thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands even, of red orbs. You could then, summon a meteor to hit your opponent. And by the way, this also drops red orbs. I don't know if you guys knew this. It's not enough to refund it, but it happens. And not to mention, you could just take the hat off, start spinning it a bit, and boom, now you got a little ghost man following you around, shooting for you. Honestly, this weapon is insanely strong and belongs at the top of S tier. But, again, I'm getting a bit too ahead of myself, and I would be quite disingenuous to put this any higher than the top of SS tier. Its power is very unmatched, it's very strong, it's borderline unbeatable, but you need chips to gamble with. So, of course, it's going to be very difficult initially, but who knows, maybe you could, just start a little bar fight with someone, Just start a fight with some guy, throw the fucking hat on him, punch him real hard, and you've already started the chain, and that's all you got to do. Either way, I'd say that that's a pretty good cap for SS tier. Either way, let's move on to the final tier of this very long awaited series. Now, before we do though, I do have to give a bit of credentials for this. These are the strongest of the strong. These weapons are really, really close to being unstoppable. A few of them are. But, like I said before in the last video, I must say this again. None of these weapons are unbeatable, no matter how strong they are. These are not unbeatable. If you mess up, if you're stupid, if you get cocky, if you do any of this stuff, you will get smacked and you will lose. The point of these rankings is to show off the power that they could hold, the power that could be achieved, the potential of each and every single one of them. Now, without further ado, let's get into the triple S tier, where we finally put an end to this series once and for all. At the bottom of triple S tier, we have the most powerful Gauntlet and Greaves weapon in the entire series, the Gilgamesh. The Gilgamesh, I know, is already a very hot button topic and leads to a lot of questions. First off, the Gilgamesh has no elemental powers whatsoever. And who is this Gilgamesh? Who is this demon that appears in the next game? We don't even know what it looks like. We have no idea the powers that it could even hold. All we know for sure is that Dante is able to destroy a very, very tall building with it, with little to no ease, and Dante wasn't able to do it before, so it must mean that the weapon is able to do it and not him. Basically, in short, this weapon is insanely strong. Yeah, very powerful, but have you guys ever wondered what Gilgamesh is? Who is he? And why does a weird cockroach thing in Devil May Cry 5 have the exact same name and somehow is just a bunch of roots? What? This doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm here to tell you what Gilgamesh is. Gilgamesh isn't a demon at all. It's a metal. See, Gilgamesh is the type of metal that exists in Hell. What it does is, when you introduce it to another piece of metal, it grows. It is a weird type of symbiote for inanimate objects, if that makes any sense. So, all the Gilgamesh Gauntlet and Greaves are just a normal pair of Gauntlet and Greaves that were somehow able to be given machine-like properties from being introduced to such a simple thing. So, there are a few things to it. Gilgamesh is unbreakable. It's unstoppable. And the machine-like pistons inside, which can be seen with certain attacks, definitely show that there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. It has all manner of saw blades, rocket-propulsed punches, and even, one of my personal favorites, a spike that shoots out of it when you do real impact. This weapon is one of my personal favorites due to the absurdity of it. And you know how when Dante equips it, he gets that little visor that covers his mouth? That actually opens up a segue to the reason why this is so high. The main reason why Ifrit and Beowulf are so low in comparison, why they were such a toss-up, and this one was definitively this high, is because the metal grows. We can see this with the Gilgamesh boss in Devil May Cry 5. All that happened there was the roots got intertwined with that metal and were left to simmer for a bit, and then it created Gilgamesh. Now keep in mind, this happened in at most a month. That thing occurred in at most a month. So I know what you're thinking. Well, what if I don't know, added a chest plate to it? Well, you would be bulletproof, stab-proof, shock-proof. Not to mention the visor's already there. You get a bit of a helmet. I don't see any reason why that would be a problem. Now, if you're thinking about this, you might come to the conclusion, well, how can you get these things off? Well, it's simple. The Gilgamesh, as seen with most Devil Arms, is instantly able to disappear when the user wants it to. It vanishes for a bit and comes back when the user needs it. Now, this could just be a gameplay thing, right? But Devil May Cry, a lot of its storytelling is told through gameplay. So I don't see why, honestly, the most absurd thing about a Devil Arm is the fact that it disappears when you don't want to use it anymore. Honestly, if I had to guess, I'd say that that's the most believable thing about it. So, at the end of the day, what do you have? You have a living, sentient metal that is able to obey every single one of your wishes, is able to build on to itself, eventually making you an unstoppable force that is able to destroy buildings by punching and kicking. All I have to say is that if you get into a fight with someone, you're most definitely going to win. And that's why I do have to say it's at the bottom of S tier. So, let's get right into the next one. The next Devil Arm is Lucifer. Lucifer is a very interesting weapon in the main idea of its potencies, its power, its strength, and how unconventional it is. The Lucifer is a weapon where you somehow pull spikes from what appears to be the wings of it. Now keep in mind, the Lucifer can be seen as two ways. Either it's a pair of wings that exist on your back, or it's a bug-like thing and you're pulling off the antenna. Now, the spikes are interesting. It's unknown where the spikes come from. See, in the cutscene that Dante uses them, he has to pull them from the antenna. But as we can see in certain moves, that's not really it. Dante's just kind of able to summon them, like he's able to summon the rose. So it seems that the weapon just has the ability to summon spikes that stay in midair, do not move any further unless you want them to, and can immediately teleport back to you. Now, there are a few things about the Lucifer that I found quite interesting. You see, Lucifer, in the cutscene where Dante uses it, he is able to puncture it, just puncture it into the wall, and when it blows up, it doesn't create a circular-like crater. That doesn't make any sense when you think about ballistics. And not only that, there are a few other problems with it. Another problem with it is when you have to put it into an enemy for it to blow up and do anything. Now, you can just leave it there and it will blow up eventually, but the blast radius of it is very, very, very small. And the only time it does something is if it's actually in someone. So, after boggling my brain for over a month while I was originally making the tier list and thinking up of everything, I eventually came to the conclusion, and this makes the most sense in my opinion. The spikes, how they explode, is a very, very specific way, which is being only the tip of it explodes. That's the only part that blows up. No other part of it explodes. This answers quite a bit of questions about it. One of the big ones being when you put it into an enemy, when it explodes, it doesn't really deal that much damage to any enemies near them. It only deals damage to the enemy that it's in. When he puts it into the demon gate, right, Dante, he puts it into the demon gate, it normally, when it blew up, these things are not thin at all. It would have had to make a giant hole, or it would have made a giant crater, right? But obviously, that's not how it works. So that would mean that somehow, magically, the explosion explodes straight forward, meaning that the only way that any of that could work, because it explodes in a type of beam, by the looks of it, when a needle goes into something, right, the needle is then lodged in. Then, at the tip of the needle, another needle or something comes out, protrudes, shoots forward, right? Until it hits, like, the other end of an enemy. And then, keep in mind, this is all instant, and then, boom, detonates. Now, this all happens instantly when the rose is thrown. And not to mention, right, this thing isn't only used for offense. It has amazing defensive potential by literally just clapping your hands. All of them come back to you, surrounding you in a massive field of them. Or you could summon all of the stray ones all right in front of you and then have them all shoot forward. You could do whatever. It's obvious that this thing has psychic abilities with these spikes that bend or do not follow the laws of reality and space. And because of that, this thing is insanely powerful and has a lot of other potential to it that I might not have even thought of, honestly. So, either way, this weapon, with all of its dangerous and powerful strength, I will have to say, goes to the number 3 spot of Triple S tier. So, the number 2 weapon in Triple S tier will have to go to the Yamato. The Yamato is a very powerful weapon with incredible amounts of strength, usability, and versatility. It is a very simple weapon to use, yet has a very high skill cap. It is everything that you would want from a Devil Arm, combined into one. As Virgil has shown us time and time again with this thing, when you truly dedicate yourself to mastering any Devil Arm, it can have truly destructive uses. I mean, do you remember how in Devil May Cry 3? Do you remember the Judgment Cut end from that game? Yeah, it's a lot less impressive than how it was in Devil May Cry 4 and 5. But that's not all the weapon has to show for it. It has a lot of strength feats and a lot of gimmicks to it. Its gimmicks are very interesting. The big one being that the sword is apparently so sharp that it can cut through both space and time, but for some reason can't cut through a rocket launcher. I still don't get that one. With the ability to cut through both space and time, one of these is a bit more debatable. So let me go into the reasoning for it. We all know that it can cut through space. How Virgil can open portals on a whim. All he has to do is slash in front of him a couple of times and he'll have a portal. Now, why do I say that it can cut through time? So do you know how in Devil May Cry they put a weird emphasis on him? How he cuts something and then sheaths its sword, and then when he sheaths it, the attack actually goes through. Typically, this is used in a lot of different series as a way of showing how fast the person cut the object. That even gravity and all that can't be affected before the cut is finished. But with Virgil's case, it's very different, because he is actually slowing down time when he hits an enemy. Now, why do I say this? I'm going to use gameplay for a second in order to calculate some of this stuff. One of the big things is in Devil May Cry 5, certain attacks will slow down enemies when you hit them with it. But the enemy will then continue as normal when Virgil sheaths the sword, which you have a choice to not do, and we can plainly see that the enemy stays suspended in time until, after a bit of time, the enemy resumes back normally. Now, this isn't just a gimmick that they gave him to make his abilities cooler. We can see this all the way back in Devil May Cry 3, in this cutscene, where Virgil attacks Arkham. Now, that is pretty interesting, huh? So, it clearly shows that the weapon has the ability to mess with time to an extent, and the only way to fix time, quote-unquote, is by resheathing the weapon and letting time correct itself. Now, it's unknown if you could potentially use this to time travel and other things like that, but I doubt it has those capabilities. I think that if hypothetically it could, Virgil would have found it out, and he would have used those powers. So it's pretty easy to say that the Yamato has the ability to cut through the flow of time. Not time itself, not time as a physical essence, but the speed at which it goes. And from what we can tell, it happens more so in a vacuum. It explains why if you move away far enough from Judgment Cut End, you're not affected by it. If it was cutting through time itself, then you would still be affected by it no matter what, and it would probably cause a lot of problems with the space-time continuum and all that. But it's very obvious that he's cutting through the flow of time. The weapon is seen to have very good durability in many different scenarios. The weapon is shown to be borderline unbreakable and can destroy anything in your path, though, just like the Rebellion, it is unknown how much of this is Virgil and how much of it is the Yamato. But just like Dante, we're going to be fair and say that it is all the Yamato. Now, there are a few other things that go into it, but I would say that the Yamato, with everything considered, is definitely the number 2 greatest Devil Arm in the entire series. Now, for the final number 1 Devil Arm in the entire series. In my opinion, the best of the best. The top of the top. We have Pandora's Box. Now, this one might seem a bit weird. I mean, I'm putting Pandora's Box, a gimmick weapon in Devil May Cry 4, above the Yamato. I have a few lines of reasoning that make it a bit more justified, in my opinion. One of the biggest things about Pandora's Box is that, first off, its potential is limitless. It is a weapon that turns into 666 different weapons, okay? Not to mention, Pandora's Box is very powerful in the attacks that we were able to see. It's very obvious that it is not just ranged attacks that it has, and it has some potential for melee attacks too. So, with that, it's pretty easy to assume that this weapon has a lot of things to it that could be shown to be very strong. Now keep in mind, even if, let's say, right, there is a group of weapons, let's say there is 100 different weapons that you cannot stand to use. All of them suck, they're all terrible, they're all god-awful, and you cannot stand using them. You still have 566 more of these things. So it's pretty safe to say that out of all of these weapons, you'll find one that you really, really like. Not to mention, the weapon gets more powerful depending on the level of mayhem during a fight. Now, the mayhem gauge appears to be, the main idea of it, is that the more destruction and chaos that you cause, the more powerful one of its, what I've dubbed, all-in attacks are. The all-in attacks are all the attacks that are used by pressing the style button while Gunslinger is equipped. These are the ones where Dante opens the case, the big rocket chair move, but from what we can tell, maybe the weapon wouldn't be that good to have on you. I mean, think about it. Constantly in your room, 24/7. And yet you don't know what's inside of that thing. Maybe that might cause a few people to make a lot of mistakes. But from the knowledge of the actual Legend of Pandora's Box, there's no way anyone would make that mistake, right? Right. Either way, in all seriousness, this weapon is insanely powerful, insanely versatile, and you become a walking militia while just simply holding it. That's why I have to say, out of all the Devil Arms in the series, this one is absolutely the best one to have. So, that was it. My first video project I've ever done. It was nice, honestly. It was a lot of fun to make, and there was a lot that went into it. I'm glad that I did it. But I'm not proud in the slightest of how long it took. I should have been better in that regard, and I promise to do better in the future. But either way, I'm happy that the project is over. And this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every second of it. I love Devil May Cry as a series. I always have. It's such an amazing franchise, and it's been with me through thick and thin. And every single time I was ever feeling down, angry, upset, just mad, every so often, I would just boot up the game. And it would take me out of things for a bit. Show me that no matter how much difficulty, how much strife was in the world, no matter how much obstacles were in your way, at the end of the day, you could always power through it. And honestly, I think that's the moral of Devil May Cry. No matter how much trouble, how much tedious, petty bullshit you have to go through, you can power through. I don't know what I'm going to do with this channel, honestly. I have a lot of ideas, but I do kind of want to refine my style a bit before I get into a lot of my passion projects. But I definitely think I'll be uploading. I actually enjoy this. I enjoy the process of creating things. I love video editing, and I love audio editing, actually. That's one thing that I definitely learned from this. But before this is over, I do want to encourage anyone who has any type of disagreements with me, leave them in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. I'm genuinely curious if you think that maybe Cavalier is actually the best, or maybe that Lucifer is actually a hunk of garbage. I want to actually know. See, the entire reason why I made this video was because one day I was bored and kind of tired, and I wanted to look through YouTube for a bit. And then I had an idea for a video, ranking Devil May Cry Devil Arms. And when I looked it up, I didn't find anything. Nothing. There were people that were ranking the games, there were people that were ranking just about everything else, but surprisingly not the weapons. I thought that was kind of unfortunate, really. So I decided to go out of my way to do it myself. And it was nice. It's definitely nice while it lasted. But either way, enough of me rambling. It's time that we finally put a nice, neat little bow on the top of this well-crafted video. Or at least I think it's well-crafted. Again, just like in part 1, if you have any sort of criticism, any ideas that you want to point out, then please do. I want to genuinely hear what I could have done better. But either way, it's time to say goodbye.